They have never loathed college football itself. They have resisted the people determined to reshape it. When Deion Sanders, black, direct, unapologetic, walks into a room of power brokers and speaks with authority instead of deference, critics recoil. During his playing days, they complained about celebrations and gold chains. Now that he is a head coach, mentor, and father, they label him something more polite, but just as dismissive, a problem. At Big 12 Media Days, Sanders addressed the accelerating chaos of the name, image, likeness market. He said college football needs a salary cap, not to hobble players, but to impose order on a system that showers unproven freshmen with seven-figure promises while the rest of a roster hunts for scraps. He called the situation unsustainable. Within hours, ESPN commentator Paul Finebaum branded him a hypocrite, arguing that Sanders profited from NIL at Jackson State and now wants rules only because his most marketable athletes have moved on. The accusation spread quickly because it fit a comfortable storyline. Outspoken black coach gains from change, then protests when the advantage disappears. That framing ignores context. Sanders never criticized players earning money. At Jackson State, he urged corporate sponsors to partner with athletes who had been invisible to major brands for decades. What he wants now is stability, standardized guidelines, basic financial literacy, and roster balance that prevents locker rooms from fracturing over uneven payouts. When other coaches, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Lane Kiffin, voiced similar concerns, they were praised for foresight. When Sanders spoke, the tone shifted to suspicion. The difference is not the message, it is the messenger. Finebaum's response followed a familiar script. When black leaders question the structure of the sport, their motives are interrogated, their credibility attacked, and their competence doubted. He did not level the same charge at Jimbo Fisher when Fisher complained that NIL disturbed recruiting. He stayed silent when Kiffin lamented the transfer portal. But Sanders, who raised enrollment and television ratings at Jackson State, brought unprecedented attention to Colorado in one season and consistently mentors players beyond football, was called opportunistic. Finebaum dismissed the cultural impact Sanders created, the exposure for historically black colleges, the draft pick developed, the infrastructure improved, reducing his work to a marketing stunt dependent on star sons Shedeur and Shiloh or two-way standout Travis Hunter. Sanders did not retaliate. He returned to practice, media obligations, and recruiting. His confidence is rooted in faith and in the responsibility he feels toward young athletes whose lives will extend decades beyond their highlight clips. When he asks for NIL boundaries, he is thinking about freshmen handed large sums without guidance, families unprepared for sudden wealth, and programs that abandon kids once production stalls. He has watched that cycle from the inside. He wants protections, not restrictions. Critics predicted Colorado would fade once Shedeur and Hunter leave. Instead, Sanders signed blue-chip quarterback G.J. Lewis and a wave of transfers eager to join a program that values personal growth as much as on-field wins. Recruits see a coach who challenges the status quo, who places black culture at the program's center without apology, and who will remain visible when social media buzz cools. They recognize that Sanders does not chase attention. Attention follows his results. Media outlets reduced the upcoming Buffaloes season to a win total prop. 6 victories, give or take. Sanders is playing a longer game. He wants to show young athletes, especially black athletes, that they can lead authentically, speak with conviction, and refuse to shrink for access. Success measured only by the scoreboard misses the point. If Sanders builds men who graduate with financial literacy, self-confidence, and community awareness, he will consider the mission successful, even if Colorado finishes with 5 wins instead of 10. None of that registers with commentators invested in an older hierarchy. For them, leadership should remain predictable, reserved posture, muted tone, minimal cultural expression. Sanders contradicts that image. The possibility that his methods could spread to other coaches, to other programs, threatens a model that has kept decision-making and revenue streams concentrated for generations. So the debate is not about hypocrisy or payroll ceilings. It is about control of the narrative and who is deemed qualified to write it. Sanders refuses to surrender that authority. He knows order is necessary. He also knows whose voices have been ignored whenever real reform is discussed. By speaking plainly, he forces television panels, athletic directors, and conference commissioners to confront issues they would rather defer: financial education, equitable resource distribution, and consistent national standards. Whether Colorado exceeds betting lines this fall will not change the trajectory Sanders has already set. He made Boulder relevant, energized recruiting beyond traditional power corridors, and broadened college football's cultural reach. That influence will persist long after social media debates cool. If his call for NIL structure eventually becomes policy, as the NCAA and Congress now contemplate, Finebaum's soundbite will fade, while Sanders' imprint endures.
This is exactly what he says. I'm told the footage of Shedeur Sanders meeting with the Giants is so bad that both the Browns and the Sanders family have threatened legal action if it is published.
The New York Giants have released audio from their draft interview with Shedeur Sanders, and the disclosure has drawn intense public reaction. Fans want to know whether Sanders made critical remarks and why the Giants shared material that should have remained confidential. The situation revolves around an open microphone, contentious comments, and the broader implications of the league. The New York Giants published a brief, edited segment from their interview with Shedeur Sanders and withheld the remaining footage. Observers are debating whether this was a strategic public relations decision or an attempt to discredit him. The team has offered no additional explanation, and many fans view the limited release as inadequate and potentially misleading. They are demanding full transparency and accusing the organization of orchestrating a negative narrative. While criticism of Sanders is vocal, his supporters are responding with equal intensity.
There was another team that he sat down with.
What do you mean it didn't go well after that? So,
he was pissed that they
did that to him.
They did that to him.
He counter-confronted
The
them.
same thing they do to every other quarterback prospect. They did that to him. They slide in a mistake to see if you catch it.
Right. And so
Because you're the quarterback.
But he didn't take it as a correction. He took it as like he got
it's
pissed
just
off.
yeah, and it's like so here's another one. So another one was, he throws a bad interception, and it was a deep throw early in the game, and he comes back and they go in the meeting, they show the interception.
The Giants have released only a brief excerpt of the interview and are refusing to share the rest. Their decision has drawn criticism across TikTok, X, and Facebook, where many see it as a poorly handled public relations move. Fans are calling for the full recording to be published so the situation can be judged in its entirety.
The GM is on film that the son, they asked the son last draft, yo, who you think I should pick? His son like, yo, you need to get the Jaden Daniels, big. This is what his son, it's on tape. You should go Jaden Daniels. He laughing at his son. And all right, cool, get Jaden Daniels. I don't even know how that tape got out. I wouldn't have let the get out.
Shedeur Sanders appears unfazed by the situation. Although the Giants suggested he was more hype than substance, their handling of the interview has instead elevated his visibility. Analysts across major sports outlets are now discussing him more than before, keeping his name prominent in the news cycle.
New York Giants, where these tapes at? You hear me? Because if Shedeur Sanders was so unprofessional, y'all would have leaked the tapes for the whole world could see, right? Cause understand, it's a lot of he say, she say. But one thing I do know, as a young black man growing up in this world, being straightforward and not sugarcoat anything.
The Giants' PR team appears to reject Sanders' family connection outright, a decision many view as unprofessional and lacking nuance. Internal discussions seem to have dismissed quarterbacks with prominent relatives as poor fits for the organization, revealing limited awareness of public perception. The response was swift. A single edited clip ignited widespread debate on social media, with fans asking why essential segments were held back and what the team might be hiding. Critics argue that if the full interview contains nothing damaging, the club should release it in its entirety. Online discussion intensified immediately and continues to gain momentum.
What they do during the film and the combine and the meetings is teams will install mistakes intentionally planted in the install, and they want you to catch them. Shedeur didn't, and when a coach called him out, once again, it didn't sit well. It's like, bro, there's not many teams needing quarterbacks, especially since Pittsburgh appears to have a deal with Aaron Rodgers and Tennessee's getting Kale Moore.
The Giants' decision to withhold the full interview has produced an unintended result. Instead of diminishing interest in Shedeur Sanders, it has intensified it. Media outlets and analysts are now examining every on-field rep, press comment, and public appearance as evidence of how he conducts himself under scrutiny. Each throw, adjustment, and answer is tracked and evaluated against league standards, reinforcing the view that he remains composed and professional. Many fans contend that the organization has misrepresented Sanders and suggest the issue may stem from the Giants' view of his father, Deion Sanders. They see the partial release as an attempt to raise doubts about his character by association. That perception has only made his profile more compelling. The discussion has shifted from whether he deserves a high draft position to how effectively he withstands sustained pressure. Sanders is now regarded not just as a talented prospect, but as a symbol of resilience, central to debates about transparency and organizational strategy. Even if the Giants eventually provide more context, the visibility they have created for him is unlikely to fade.
The most fun yet the most difficult thing I cover and we cover all year long is not games. It's the NFL draft. Because I've said this many times, you get lied to for a month to 2 months up to it. And so often during the draft, and every few drafts, there's a guy that really falls, precipitously falls. This year it was Shedeur Sanders, it's been Aaron Rodgers, it's been Dan Marino. Every few years somebody falls a lot. And so, but those stories don't come out until like the fall.
Criticism of Shedeur Sanders from within the Giants organization has become increasingly public. Team communications appear focused on casting him as an overhyped prospect, whose character should be questioned, a narrative that seems aimed at shaping opinion rather than assessing performance. Yet each selective release or negative remark has instead amplified attention on Sanders and elevated his reputation. Efforts to confine him to a narrow, unfavorable image continue to produce the opposite effect, reinforcing his position as an underdog who endures external pressure. The debate has shifted from football analysis to broader concerns about narrative control and transparency. Fans, reporters, and online communities are still urging the Giants to publish the full interview, arguing that only complete context can resolve speculation. The organization's refusal to comply has intensified scrutiny and led many observers to conclude that the team underestimated public reaction and now faces questions it could have avoided with full disclosure.
The tapes, the New York Giants have the tape. They definitely have the tape. It's confirmation that they have the tape. Shedeur didn't do nothing. It's what they saying he did. I'm gonna tell you what these mixed reaction right here. So we already know about the New York Giants, but the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin reported admired Sanders' talent, but hesitated to draft him due to previous challenges with quarterbacks like Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, leading to more cautious approach. Las Vegas Raiders. Sanders met with Raiders at the NFL Scouting Combine and expressed enthusiasm about potentially joining the team. His familiarity with the West Coast offense and quick release was noted positive, though concerns about his ceiling.
Hours after the Giants posted that short audio clip, the timeline never slowed. Comment threads filled with frame-by-frame breakdowns, lip-read attempts, and side-by-side comparisons of what was said versus what was left out. Reporters called league contacts. No one could explain why a franchise would stir this level of curiosity only to seal the vault. Each refusal sharpened focus on Shedeur Sanders, turning routine throws into national talking points. Analysts kept circling back to the same note. His cadence at the line looks unchanged, steady against the noise. Hashtags demanding the full interview, trend drop, and trend again. Podcast hosts bump scheduled segments to lead with the leak. Rival teams get asked how they would handle a similar situation, then quietly check their own archives. Inside Giants headquarters, the plan to shape the story looks less like strategy and more like a slow burn spotlight they can't switch off. And now every preseason snap, every media availability, every stray sideline camera angle gets fed into a loop that asks, what are they still hiding? The file remains locked. Curiosity keeps compounding. Until someone presses upload or steps to a podium and explains the redactions, the subject drifts away from depth charts and play design, fixing instead on secrecy, control, and the risk of underestimating how fast attention turns pressure into permanence. Momentum isn't fading, it keeps recalibrating, louder, impossible to mute.
So the Shedeur Sanders, I want to talk about this. So here's a prime example. Shedeur Sanders, they had 3-day mini camp for the Cleveland Browns. And now, Jimmy Haslam actually has some money. The Bengals owners and the Rooneys are near the bottom of the league in net worth. But what the Browns have is what I would call the Buffalo Bills used to have this years ago, pre-Josh Allen.
What are Browns veterans saying about Shedeur Sanders behind closed doors? According to internal discussions, the feedback goes beyond casual praise. Several veterans describe his performance as franchise level. Private locker room conversations compare his command of the offense to established starters. And one senior assistant reportedly called him Sunday ready after a single walkthrough. The consensus is that front office staff and coaches have taken serious serious notice. Inside the Browns facility, informal conversations circulate among players and coaches. These remarks carry significant weight in personnel evaluations and often influence practice rotations. When veterans speak this strongly, the message typically reaches decision makers quickly, especially during roster planning. In short, the internal perception of Sanders is already affecting how the staff views the current quarterback depth chart.
Browns vets kind of weigh in on Shedeur Sanders and how he's been since he arrived in Cleveland, in Pound Town. And I think it's very, very important that we discuss it, because it'd be really easy for these vets to, this wasn't like a on-the-record interview. This is just kind of back channels into what the vets are saying, the rumors, but the sources telling us. And we have a couple quotes, but Shedeur Sanders, Cleveland Browns, it seems like it's going well. And it's almost like you don't want to talk about it.
At the center of the growing internal buzz is Shedeur Sanders, the rookie who entered Berea with late-round expectations but is being discussed privately as a potential long-term starter. This is not a routine camp tale about an extra arm taking practice snaps. Sanders has seasoned teammates, players with playoff mileage, quietly reassessing his ceiling. Observers who overlook these conversations risk missing one of Cleveland's most deliberate personnel moves in years. Sanders is not on the roster because of his surname. The Browns reviewed their quarterback depth, weighed costs, and chose a controlled, development-oriented option they believe can stabilize the position. His presence is already changing practice dynamics. Veterans notice his pocket awareness, adjust routes to his timing, and acknowledge that he processes coverage at an advanced level for a first-year player. Leadership patterns in the huddle feel different. Sanders delivers with precision and composure that challenge defenders to reevaluate their calls. The strategic upside is clear. A 4-year rookie contract offers cap flexibility while other franchises cycle through expensive stopgaps. Coaches and front office staff view Sanders as a calculated investment, not a publicity experiment. Outside chatter still focuses on Joe Flacco's age or Kenny Pickett's development. Inside the facility, however, veterans pause film sessions to dissect Sanders' ball placement and progression speed. Position coaches highlight clips where he works through reads decisively and delivers on time, traits rarely attributed to rookies. Sanders' confidence is measured rather than theatrical. He moves as though the NFL tempo is familiar, and that calm spreads across the roster. Experienced defenders are rechecking the depth chart and asking if the quarterback competition is tighter than publicly acknowledged.
Great kid, and whether it's a following that he's earned, I mean, that's something that he's done a great job of interacting with fans, and but he is a great kid. You guys will get to know him more. He's working like crazy, just like all the guys. He's another young man. These rookies, my office is downstairs. As they got to walk by my office as they come in. They come in early. And Shedeur, just like all those guys, he's in there early. He's getting his work done.
He has not yet secured the starting job. Evaluations so far come only from brief practice periods, no comeback drives, no national headlines, just steady execution in shorts and helmets. In a league that celebrates splashy debuts, Shedeur Sanders is earning trust rep by rep. Veterans typically withhold judgment until late in camp, yet several are already studying his footwork and timing, which suggests genuine respect. Inside the building, coaches sense that the Browns may have finally found a stabilizing presence at quarterback. Cleveland's recent history underscores why this matters. The team has started 9 quarterbacks over the past 2 seasons, an indicator of instability rather than depth. Sanders arrives with composure, arm strength, and a well-known surname, so any sign of readiness is magnified. Financial context also plays a role. The Browns are allocating a significant portion of the salary cap to Deshaun Watson, whose performance has not matched that investment. To manage costs, the front office signed 4 additional quarterbacks on low-impact contracts. Together, they account for far less than Watson's annual cap figure. If Sanders continues on his current trajectory, that structure could give Cleveland both competitive clarity and much-needed financial flexibility.
He's the only person who's come out and say, hey, man, this dude look kind of good, man. Let me tell you what I heard. A lot of people reaching out to players in the locker room and stuff. To me, I think this is it's a red herring. Like, I'm supposed to suspend myself to disbelief that he was going to look bad. I've never expected him to look bad to start with. The 5th round quarterback stuff, that's involving perceptions, pre-draft analysis, and other teams
Cleveland's veterans have endured every kind of quarterback turmoil, poor reads, major injuries, shaken confidence, and sideline disputes. When a young quarterback like Shedeur Sanders steps in and appears composed rather than overwhelmed, people notice. The attention comes not just from coaches and reporters, but from the linemen and defensive leaders who have watched previous backups struggle. They are not exchanging doubts, they are sharing nods of approval. Sanders demonstrates instinctive pocket awareness, reliable accuracy, and steady poise, qualities that quickly circulate through team conversations. After years of instability under center, the Browns need someone who can remain calm and effective deep into the season. Although expectations have fallen over time, genuine interest is growing. Praise is coming from teammates who rarely commend anyone unless his performance demands it. The rumors have ended. The decision is public. Cleveland Browns owner Jimmy Haslam has informed every level of the organization that unless an unforeseen injury intervenes, Shedeur Sanders will start at quarterback in week 1. The announcement is not an informal suggestion or a quiet push in the background. It is a direct order. Multiple independent reports, amplified most visibly by Colin Cowherd, confirm that Haslam delivered the directive himself. From the owner's viewpoint, the logic is simple. No one else on the roster offers the same combination of talent, leadership, and long-term upside. Joe Flacco is approaching the twilight of his career. Kenny Pickett has shown flashes but remains inconsistent. Dylan Gabriel, taken in the 3rd round, is a developmental project. By contrast, Haslam believes Sanders can alter the franchise's trajectory immediately, and he refuses to allow internal hesitation to stall that possibility. The standoff traces back to April. General manager Andrew Berry and head coach Kevin Stefanski entered the draft wanting a low-profile prospect who would fit quietly into the existing depth chart. They prioritized scheme familiarity, modest public attention, and a clear developmental timeline. When the board lined up, they reached for Gabriel in round 3, reasoning that an early investment would justify keeping a rookie on ice behind the veterans. But Sanders continued to slide, first through day 2, then deep into round 5. Haslam watched the names come off the board, convinced the league's bias against Deion Sanders' outspoken son was obscuring legitimate first-round talent. When Cleveland's 5th-round pick arrived and Sanders was still available, Haslam intervened. He did more than approve the choice, he overrode the original plan, making it clear that the organization would select Sanders and give him every chance to compete. From that moment on, the Browns' internal narrative splintered into 2 camps, those ready to accelerate around their owner's vision and those still trying to protect their original approach. Once rookie minicamp began, Sanders erased much of the speculation. He commanded huddles, processed coverages quickly, and delivered throws with anticipation that belied his draft slot. Teammates noted his willingness to accept blame for missed timing, then correct the error without dramatics. While Flacco and Pickett split most first-team reps, Sanders treated limited opportunities as full-speed auditions. During organized team activities, he identified blitz looks, redirected protections, and consistently found his second read when the primary route was covered. More than one defensive veteran told local reporters that Sanders looks like the best arm in the building. That assessment forced Berry and Stefanski to reevaluate their timetable. They could no longer label Sanders a long-term project without contradicting on-field evidence. Drafting Gabriel 2 rounds earlier had provided the staff an excuse to slow roll Sanders' ascent. Coaches could point to investment cost, meeting room familiarity, and installation comfort to justify Gabriel's snap share. Yet each practice rep in which Sanders outperformed the 3rd rounder weakened that shield. Behind closed doors, position coaches began requesting more Sanders film for cut-ups, and offensive assistants quietly shifted meeting questions toward concepts the rookie already executed well. By mid-June, Berry himself started describing Sanders not as a developmental asset, but as a competitive option. Those subtle linguistic changes signal the front office's recognition that the narrative had moved beyond their control. Haslam's history with quarterbacks is well documented. His pushes for Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, and Deshaun Watson were high-visibility swings, each driven in part by a desire to generate excitement as well as wins. Critics highlight those choices to question his evaluation track record, yet Haslam perceives Sanders differently. Where Manziel carried off-field concerns, Sanders brings a reputation for professionalism. Where Mayfield's leadership style divided veterans, Sanders' approach has united receivers and linemen. Where Watson's trade involved unprecedented controversy, Sanders arrived at minimal draft cost. Haslam sees a rare chance to capture star potential without mortgaging the future, and he is unwilling to cede that upside to cautious pacing. Cleveland's supporters, weary of revolving door quarterbacks, have rallied around Sanders with unexpected speed. Sales of customized Sanders number 2 jerseys surged within days of rookie minicamp. Training camp ticket requests spiked once local media circulated videos of Sanders making NFL-caliber anticipation formation throws during 7-on-7 periods. The mood in Northeast Ohio has changed from tentative hope to active belief. Longtime season ticket holders who once shrugged at preseason storylines now debate Sanders' footwork at neighborhood barbecues. Social media engagement for Brown's content has climbed, driven by highlight compilations of the rookie threading seam passes between linebackers and safeties. All of this places Kevin Stefanski in a fragile position. If he opens week 1 with a veteran starter and the offense sputters, criticism will be swift. Each stalled drive will be interpreted as evidence that he ignored the owner's edict and the fan base's intuition. Conversely, if he names Sanders the starter solely under pressure, any early struggles could be framed as proof that Sanders was rushed, further exposing Stefanski to blame. The only sustainable solution is conviction. Either stand behind a veteran with clear strategic reasoning or embrace Sanders fully and structure the offense around his strengths. Splitting the difference, rotating series, delaying first-team reps, or using vague competition language will satisfy no one and likely jeopardize locker room clarity. Sanders' personal approach has reinforced Haslam's confidence. Instead of taking post-draft downtime, he traveled to Texas to train in full Browns gear at facilities near his father's home. The leaked clip of Sanders executing footwork drills in helmet and pads wasn't a marketing ploy. It was a glimpse into a quarterback visualizing Week 1 live. Team personnel who viewed the footage recognized purposeful rehearsal, cadence calls, pocket movement against simulated pressure, and follow-through adjustments based on imagined rush lanes. Observers asked why a rookie would conduct such intense solo sessions in May. The answer is straightforward. Sanders does not view himself as a developmental pick. He considers himself the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns and prepares accordingly. On pure ability, Sanders' arm strength ranks with the league average for starters. His accuracy to the intermediate middle, an area where the Browns' current scheme generates high-leverage completions, has drawn consistent praise from receivers. The primary areas still under review are blitz recognition and live bullets and timing on deep outbreaking routes versus press coverage. Those developmental checkpoints are significant, yet daily practice reps show acceleration. In contrast, Flacco's mobility limits the boot action game that Stefanski installed to help Mayfield early in his tenure. Pickett can extend plays, but struggles to attack tight windows between linebackers and safeties, an essential requirement in Cleveland schematics. Gabriel remains an unknown at NFL speed. Thus, the competitive landscape favors Sanders sooner than the coaching staff originally planned. The franchise now stands at an inflection point. Haslam's mandate, the locker room's growing support, and the fan base's enthusiasm all tilt towards Sanders. The front office's earlier strategy, anchored in patience and quiet development, is increasingly untenable. Barry's shift in messaging indicates grudging alignment, but final authority over the depth chart rests with the coaching staff, unless ownership directly intervenes on game day decisions. A move rare but not unprecedented in the NFL. Should Stefanski align with the owner and name Sanders the starter before preseason concludes, he can claim proactive vision and tailor the offense through training camp. Should he resist and open with a veteran who falters, he risks rapid loss of credibility and possibly his position. Either path carries pressure, but only one aligns with the momentum sweeping through the building. For 2 decades, the Browns have cycled quarterbacks without securing a stable star. Each new hope, whether draft pick or trade acquisition, has collapsed under injuries, inconsistency, or organizational disarray. The possibility that Sanders could finally anchor the position is not merely a football storyline. It is a potential cultural reset for a fan base defined by resilience. Haslam's insistence reflects that awareness. Cleveland needs a leader who can win on Sundays and project confidence every other day of the week. Sanders has shown he can shoulder expectations without retreating from scrutiny. That trait, more than arm talent alone, is why the owner views him as indispensable. Voluntary workouts transition to mandatory minicamp next week. If Sanders receives a substantial share of first-team snaps, observers will interpret it as the staff's acknowledgement that the competition is tilting decisively. A public declaration may not follow immediately, but every rep allocation is a signal. If, however, the staff continues funneling most top unit snaps to Flacco or Pickett, tension will escalate. Local media will question the evaluation process. National analysts will debate the merits of letting a rookie learn through live action versus controlled practice. Inside the facility, players will recognize any disconnect between performance and opportunity, and unity could fray. The Browns have reached a decisive moment. Shedeur Sanders has demonstrated the skill, poise, and work work ethic to justify starting in week 1. Jimmy Haslam has publicly positioned him as the future, and by implication the present of the franchise. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry must either endorse that vision or brace for the consequences of delaying it. For Cleveland fans, the significance is clear. A legitimate chance to exit the cycle of quarterback uncertainty and rally behind a signal caller capable of commanding the field and galvanizing the city. Whether that opportunity is seized promptly or postponed will define the Browns' 2025 season and likely the tenure of the decision makers involved.
They say training camp decides depth charts, but Shedeur Sanders began fighting for his job long before he will step inside the Browns facility. While most first-year players squeezed in one last vacation, he slipped onto a private field in Texas, strapped on Cleveland's helmet and shoulder pads, pulled a fresh number 2 jersey over his chest, and started rifling timing routes as if it were the opening drive of week 1. No cameras, no hype track, no product placement, just sweat, cadence, and ball placement. A rookie does not rehearse in full game gear unless he already envisions himself commanding the huddle. Plenty of observers shrug that clip off. They insist the 5th rounder, quote, isn't ready, cling to depth chart conventions, or whisper that the name across his shoulders did most of the talking on draft day. Maybe it is the Deion connection, maybe it is a preference for prospects who blend quietly into the background, or maybe the league's gatekeepers fear the possibility that the kid is better than the quarterbacks they have spent months promoting. Whatever the motive, the countdown has started, and video rarely lies. Shedeur Sanders is not preparing to arrive. He is preparing to lead. Footage of a 22-year-old quarterback running live reps in July should dominate highlight loops, but it barely registers on national outlets. Why? It ruins the tidy narrative. The easy storyline paints Shedeur as a pampered legacy prospect banking on his father's fame. Yet the tape shows something different. A rookie drenched in afternoon heat, drilling footwork, calling protections, and imagining cover 2 rotation before the first official meeting ever takes place. Elite mental prep looks boring on social feeds. It looks devastating when the season starts. Walk into Cleveland's quarterback room and you step into politics, not simply competition. Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl MVP in decline, carries institutional trust. Kenny Pickett, rescued from Pittsburgh's reset, carries hometown intrigue. Dylan Gabriel, the 3rd-round system fit, carries draft capital the staff must justify. And then there's Shedeur, the lightning rod whose presence alone spotlights every bias in the evaluation process. Coaches frame it neatly. Rookies must wait their turn. The truth is less polite. Practice snaps are currency. Perception is elastic, and early allocations already favor Pickett and Flacco. It is the oldest playbook in the league. Lock vets into the headline roles before pads even crack. Then let repetition shape reality. Sanders refuses to cooperate. He is not a 4th-string camp arm. He has engineered game-winning drives under national scrutiny, operated against live blitz looks most prospects never face, and more than any quarterback in the room, documented his own offseason obsession. No social media rollout, no brand consultant, just pads, cleats, and an unlit practice field. If his last name were Smith, pundits would label him the sleeper of camp. Instead, politics trails every throw. Training camp rotations expose organizational intent. Beat writer Fred Greetham already reports that Pickett and Flacco will open with first-team reps when veterans report July 23rd. Gabriel grabs the developmental snaps, leaving Sanders the leftovers. That isn't performance-based, it's narrative-safe. Gabriel doesn't threaten hierarchy, Sanders bends gravity. Watch the details. Does Shedeur steal 11-on-11 snaps with the 2s? Does he run red zone installs or 2-minute drills? If he does, coaches are admitting he is forcing his way in. If he doesn't, they are postponing the inevitable. Either way, the private field reps have sharpened his timing and condensed his release. He is not hoping for an opportunity, he is prepared to seize one the instant it appears. Cleveland's joint practices amplify that tension. First come live periods against the Panthers, then sessions with the champion Eagles. Those reps belong to the starters, so Flacco and Pickett will absorb most of Carolina's disguised pressure and Philadelphia's exotic fronts. Sanders' proving ground will be the preseason opener on August 8th. Under the stadium lights, he will get entire series, real reads, pockets collapsing for real. If his command mirrors the footage from Texas, coaches will have to answer why he never saw earlier work. Reps are scarce. 10 padded practices separate veteran arrival from game 1. Even an even split, something that never happens, would hardly suffice. Instead, the staff will funnel snaps toward the comfortable choices. That strategy can bury a rookie, but it can also spark an eruption when limited opportunities turn into highlight drives. One flawless touchdown march in the second half of a preseason game, and the dog pound will chant his name. Then the staff's narrative control evaporates.
Criticism of Sanders has never matched the scrutiny applied to his peers. Analysts nitpick a ball pat, a foot angle, a pump fake, Pickett's inconsistency, Flacco's diminishing velocity, Gabriel's college system crutches, discussed politely, if at all. With Shedeur, the critiques arrive as coded doubts. Does he rely on the family brand? Is he coachable? Can he stay humble? That double standard is as old as the league's resistance to outspoken black quarterbacks. Add Deion's unapologetic persona, and each Sanders rep becomes a referendum on establishment comfort levels. Shedeur answers not with rebuttals, but with work. Work captured in silent footage more deafening than any debate show monologue. Quarterback drama masks broader roster cracks. The Browns receiver group is crowded yet unproven. The safety room failed to create turnovers a year ago. Interior defensive linemen are still rehabbing, and the offensive line must retool on the fly. Which quarterback can navigate that turbulence? Flacco's pocket mobility is limited. Pickett's confidence remains fragile. Gabriel is months away from processing NFL disguises. Sanders, forged by perpetual doubt, offers poise under chaos and meticulous preparation, a combination this franchise has lacked since, well, almost forever. Forget politics, depth chart etiquette, and recycled sound bites about developmental timelines. The only metric that counts now is who did the work. Sanders pounding through full gear scripts in late June is not vanity, it's vision. While the league sleeps, he refines his drop steps. While media speculate, he rehearses third down checks. He has already decided what he is. The organization must decide if it can recognize it in time. The preseason will provide the answer. Live bullets, real blitzes, stadium noise. When those throws leave his hand under pressure, no one will discuss ball pats or surnames. They will ask how a quarterback this prepared slipped to round 5. And if the performance matches the preparation, excuses about lack of reps will dissolve. It will be production against perception, and Shedeur Sanders has been producing where no one could see. Ready is the wrong word. He has been ready. Chris Carter's televised assessment of Shedeur Sanders triggered immediate pushback from Cleveland fans, local media, and even several Browns veterans. Carter dismissed Sanders, a 5th-round pick, as unprepared to start and framed the growing interest around him as purely a byproduct of surname recognition. Since that segment aired, practice reports have told a very different story. Observers inside the Browns facility describe a rookie quarterback who is closing the gap on Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel with surprising speed. Sanders first turned heads in rookie minicamp by directing the huddle with a calm that belied his inexperience. Position coaches reported that he rarely repeated mental errors during installation periods, a trait they rank highly when grading young quarterbacks. In organized team activities, he showed consistent timing on intermediate routes, kept turnover numbers low in 7-on-7 periods, and demonstrated early command of Kevin Stefanski's protection calls. That steady execution earned him a handful of first-team snaps, reps that would ordinarily have belonged to Pickett by default. By mandatory minicamp, the rotation had shifted again. Practice notes from beat reporters detail the rise in Sanders' workload each day. Red zone series against the starting defense, 2-minute drills, and full field scrimmage possessions in which he checked out of called plays when fronts dictated it. Mary Kay Cabot, initially skeptical Sanders would challenge for game day snaps in 2025, wrote after consecutive sessions in mid-June that his footwork, release speed, and pocket management had, quote, meaningfully tightened since rookie camp. Her tone marked a clear departure from early spring projections that labeled Sanders a long-term developmental project. The broader quarterback context in Cleveland magnifies that progress. Deshaun Watson's availability and form remain uncertain after 2 injury-interrupted seasons, while Pickett's transition from Pittsburgh has been uneven. Dillon Gabriel's arm strength is evident, but coaches continue to stress hesitation in his full-field reads. Against that backdrop, Sanders' quick decision-making and mechanical efficiency have begun to look less like a pleasant surprise and more like the roster's most reliable short-term plan. Inside the locker room, acceptance has followed performance. Wide receivers cite Sanders' ball placement on outbreaking routes, noting that the ball routinely arrives on the upfield shoulder, a small but essential detail that allows for yards after the catch. Offensive linemen appreciate his pocket awareness. Joel Bitonio remarked privately that Sanders slides up instead of bailing when edge pressure flashes. Defensive backs say his eye discipline forces them to hold coverage longer than they expected against a rookie. Such cross-positional respect develops only when day-to-day tape shows tangible improvement.
The reaction to Carter's critique highlights a recurring double standard applied to young black quarterbacks. Traits celebrated as swagger or confidence in other players were labeled arrogance when associated with Sanders, yet the quarterback himself has not responded publicly. There have been no subtle social media jabs, no mention of critics in interviews, only repeated references to competing for every rep and learning from veterans. That measured approach, combined with hard evidence from practice, has softened earlier doubts among coaches who prioritize demeanor as much as arm talent. Within the coaching staff, the discussion now centers on readiness thresholds. Stefanski's scheme relies heavily on quick rhythm throws, defined reads, and disciplined pocket movement. Those requirements align with Sanders' strengths: a compact release, willingness to target the middle of the field, and instinctive timing on RPO concepts carried over from his college tape. Staffers reviewing cut-ups from joint practices note that his internal clock already approximates NFL speed, a metric they did not expect to see until mid-season at best. If that trajectory continues through preseason games, the Browns face a consequential decision. Starting a 5th-round rookie 6 weeks after training camp opens would unsettle salary cap assumptions, depth chart politics, and external perceptions of organizational stability. Yet the internal mandate remains clear: the most prepared quarterback will play. That standard places Sanders in genuine contention because every practice metric used to grade readiness, turnover ratio, red zone efficiency, third down conversion rate has trended in his favor since early June. The organizational stakes are considerable. Cleveland has cycled through starting quarterbacks at a startling pace over the past decade, shifting from first-round investments like Baker Mayfield to high-cost gambles such as Watson, each move packaged as the long-awaited solution. A rookie chosen outside the first 100 picks ascending to the top of the depth chart would challenge long-held league assumptions about draft pedigree and opportunity. It would also validate the evaluation philosophy that prioritized Sanders' intangibles: processing speed, leadership presence, over conventional arm strength thresholds that pushed him down the draft board. Carter's televised remarks now sit awkwardly alongside daily updates from Berea. His critique relied on pre-draft labels and the presumption that a late-round passer with a famous father would need a redshirt year. Practice film contradicts that stance. Sanders checks protections at the line, manipulates safeties with shoulder fakes, and has reduced turnover-worthy throws and full-speed sessions to single digits. Statistics normally cited for veteran backups, not rookies. The longer that evidence accumulates, the more Carter's comments appear rooted in legacy bias rather than objective performance review. None of this guarantees Sanders will open the season under center. Preseason defenses test quarterbacks in ways practice cannot. Defensive coordinators will disguise pressure and boundary rotation to force late decisions. Sanders must show he can adjust protections and exploit mismatches without the benefit of a controlled environment. Yet within the Browns facility, the conversation has shifted from if he will be ready to when. Quiet confidence from Amari Cooper and other veterans suggests they believe Sanders can steady an offense searching for consistency more than highlight reel heroics. Sanders' rise also affects long-term roster calculus. If he earns the job and performs competently, Cleveland gains starter-level production on a cost-controlled rookie contract, freeing cap space allocated to other positions. That scenario could reshape roster-building strategy in a division featuring Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, quarterbacks whose contracts consume significant percentages of team payroll. A capable, low-cost starter would allow the Browns to reinforce their offensive line and secondary while retaining core veterans, a competitive advantage few teams enjoy. For now, the focal point remains daily improvement. Sanders continues to arrive before sunrise, reviewing the previous day's install with the quarterback coach, then staying after practice to throw on-air routes with receivers low on the depth chart. Coaches track those habits closely because consistent routine underpins performance when adversity strikes in live games. Each incremental gain strengthens the argument that readiness depends on preparation and aptitude, not draft slot. Carter's segment reminded the league how quickly assessments can become outdated when they lean on perception over evidence. Sanders' steady climb up the depth chart underscores the counterpoint. In the NFL, tape is the final arbiter. Should Sanders translate practice efficiency to preseason success, the Browns may discover that the solution to their long-standing quarterback riddle arrived quietly in the 5th round, carrying little more than confidence and a willingness to work.
Shedeur Sanders did not treat day 4 of Browns training camp as anything other than work. He completed 8 of 11 passes with 3 touchdowns, operating with control and accuracy throughout the red zone periods. The throws were varied: a well-placed ball to rookie Luke Floria that led him across the goal line in stride, a firm throw to Cade McDonald over middle after a quick read, and a tight window completion to Deontay Johnson at the back of the end zone with 2 defenders closing. The sequence showed timing, poise, and placement under pressure.
while national attention centered on Joe Flacco's underneath completions and Kenny Pickett's option and rollout periods, Sanders produced scoring plays on schedule. The performance was not the product of broken coverages or end-of-period reps. It came within structured work with defenders in position and the offense executing standard progressions. The accuracy rate, 8 completions on 11 attempts, reflected consistent mechanics and decisions. The operation was steady from huddle to snap to finish. Despite that session, the distribution of first-team snaps did not change. Camp logs indicated that Pickett and Dillon Gabriel continued rotating with the starters, while Sanders remained primarily with the second unit. With the first preseason game approaching, that choice drew more attention from observers who expected productive days to be followed by expanded opportunities. The question surfaced again: what additional evidence is required to evaluate Sanders with the top group? The 3 touchdowns illustrated different aspects of his profile. On the throw to Floria, Sanders used a measured trajectory to lead the receiver away from contact and into the end zone. On the ball to Johnson, he identified leverage, held the safety with his shoulders, and delivered to a precise spot at the back line. On the throw to McDonald, he eliminated the first read, reset, and drove the ball into the window before the hook defender could squeeze it. Each score reflected a particular tool: anticipation, manipulation, and velocity within standard timing. Comparisons to the other quarterbacks were straightforward. Pickett produced 2 touchdowns but placed 1 late ball that exposed a receiver to contact near the goal line. Gabriel accounted for 1 score, with additional gains coming on checkdowns and designed movement. Flacco advanced the ball in short increments without finishing drives during the same period. Sanders converted opportunities into points repeatedly and without turnovers. The rotation, however, remained unchanged. Head coach Kevin Stefanski and the staff continued to allocate first-team work to the same group, describing the process as an open evaluation. In practice, that has meant extended starter reps for Pickett and Gabriel, veteran scripts for Flacco, and second unit periods for Sanders. The disconnect between output and opportunity was notable, particularly given the stated goal of reaching an early decision at quarterback. When asked about the timeline recently, Stefanski said the preference was to decide sooner rather than later, an acknowledgement that the window for assessment is limited as preseason approaches. Speculation about motives is common in such situations. The discussion has included references to front office perspectives and ownership influence. Owner Jimmy Haslam is widely viewed as supportive of drafting Sanders. General manager Andrew Berry is known for prioritizing fit, traits, and process within the roster building model. Stefanski reports to Berry, and the practice plan reflects coaching evaluation within organizational parameters. None of that guarantees any outcome. It does explain why rotations can remain conservative even after strong individual periods. Regardless of internal views, the most useful next step for the evaluation would be a defined set of first-team snaps for Sanders to put comparable tape next to his peers. There was also outside attention on several practice segments from earlier in camp that showed Sanders throwing during lulls to non-receiver personnel, ball attendants, staffers, and assistants, while other quarterbacks were in script with full units. Those clips circulated widely and were interpreted by some as dismissive. Sanders addressed questions about it by narrowing the focus to preparation, explaining that his responsibility is to be ready for the work assigned and that he has adjusted at every level of competition, from HBCU ball to the Power 5 and now the NFL. The response matched his general approach: acknowledge the situation, maintain routine, and continue to execute when the next period begins. The broader draft day and narrative context remains part of the conversation. Sanders' college resume included efficient production and high completion rates across 2 programs, culminating in national recognition such as the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. His selection in the 5th round was driven by varying evaluations of projection, scheme fit, and development timelines. The result is the current environment. He must present his case within limited windows, then wait for access to the next rung of competition. That does not make the process unfair, it makes it exacting. The best answer, for him and for the staff, is additional, comparable reps and clear tape. Fan reaction after day 4 was direct. Social accounts and comment threads filled with assessments that centered on performance rather than reputation. Sanders produced 3 touchdowns, avoided negative plays, and showed command in the red zone. Supporters pointed to that tape and asked for opportunities with the starters to verify whether the same rhythm carries over with the top receivers and linemen. The message was not about headlines. It was about the logic of evaluation in a compressed calendar. From an operational standpoint, Sanders' day reflected consistent fundamentals. His base was disciplined, his eyes matched his feet, and his timing aligned with route depths. On the Johnson score, he used a subtle shoulder turn to hold the safety before resetting and throwing to the back line. On the McDonald throw, the ball was out on the second hitch, arriving before the defenders could converge. On the Floria play, the arc and placement minimized the hit risk and maximized the run-through. Those are portable traits. They translate across units if the timing with receivers is established through reps. The staff's balancing act is real. They must prepare the presumed Week 1 starter with sufficient continuity while also giving developmental players enough exposure to judge ceiling and floor. That tension is present in every camp. The cleanest path through it is to carve out defined first-team sequences for each competitor and evaluate the tape against comparable defenses and situations. High red zone, low red zone, third and medium, and 2-minute. Sanders' performance on day 4 strengthened the case for such an allocation. Context matters off the field as well. Earlier in the offseason, 2 speeding citations, 91 miles per hour in Brunswick and 101 miles per hour in Strongsville, prompted public comment from Barry, who emphasized standards and safety. Sanders accepted responsibility, stated that he learned from the incidents and moved on. In camp, he has kept the focus on football tasks, install retention, cadence management, protection IDs, and post-practice review. He has also continued to build rapport across position groups, including veteran receivers and defensive backs, so that timing and expectations are clear when reps arrive. None of this diminishes the experience of the veterans in the room. Flacco has decades of film, Pickett has multiple seasons of NFL starts, and Gabriel brings mobility and a defined collegiate profile. It does, however, underscore the purpose of camp, to align decisions with current performance. Sanders produced the most efficient scoring period of the day. The next logical step is to see that operation with the starting unit, document the results, and compare them to the other candidates under the same conditions. The preseason opener will compress timelines further. Install packages expand, and coaches begin to narrow personnel groupings. If the objective is to identify the quarterback who can operate the offense most cleanly on Sundays, then structured exposure now will give the staff better information later. A small but deliberate set of first-team snaps for Sanders, scripted early downs, a third down sequence, and a red zone series would provide data without disrupting broader preparation. Until that occurs, Sanders can only continue to control process and execution. Day 4 showed what that looks like when opportunities align. Efficient reads, disciplined mechanics, and finishes in the end zone. He did not seek attention for the sequence. He put it on tape. If the evaluation remains consistent with the stated competition, comparable snaps should follow. If they do, the staff will have a clear, side-by-side measure. If they do not, the question from observers will remain the same. What more needs to be seen to justify the look? For now, the record from day 4 is clear. 8 completions on 11 attempts, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, red zone precision, consistent control at the line and in the pocket. Those are tangible outputs. They merit a defined opportunity with the starters as the team moves toward preseason and the decision that follows. Whether or not that opportunity arrives immediately, Sanders has shown the preparation and execution necessary to be evaluated on equal footing. The next step is a matter of allocation, not speculation.